Hey, yo, welcome to V's Vibes. Well, hopefully we can catch a vibe, talk about anything y'all want to talk about. I want to talk about. I'm using a different camera today. Just want to kind of see how it turns out. As you can see, my tripod is right there. So I'm definitely not using my phone, using a different camera. Hopefully this turns out. Hopefully it's a little bit better than using my phone. Yeah, I've been gone for a minute, but I'm back with the. Come on now. Just wanted to kind of share with you guys some of the things that's been going on with me. Obviously, if you're subscribed, then you're interested, right? Right? Right. Obviously. So thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing, share, like. Obviously, hit me up in the comments if you like to engage with me. So yeah, this is V's Vibes. Y'all ready? Let's go.
Go get up, go, go get up, go, go get up, go, go get up.
This is a remix, so throw your hands in the air, wave them all around like you just don't care. This is a remix, so throw your hands in the air, wave them all around like you just don't care.
Hey, y'all miss me? Nah, but for real, you miss me? So what I want to chat about just for a few minutes here is the reading K-12 test. I know this might not be applicable or interesting or relevant to some of you guys that are not educators, but I do want to talk about the test because I realize that many people don't do well on this test, and I want to talk about my experience with the test. I just recently took it last month. I guess it's been a little bit over a month now. I want to talk about my experience with the test. I want to talk about my preparation. I want to talk about how I felt while I was taking the test, after the test, and some things that I think maybe that you can do to ensure your success on the test. All right. So that's what we're chatting about today. So obviously the reading K-12 test is a computer-based test, as most of them are these days. And they give you 120 minutes to take the test. So what's that? 2 hours. And the test is not broken down into sections like some of the other tests, particularly the educator's test or the professional. What test is the Feely? um, it is not broken down like the Feely in different subsections. It is really, one through how many ever questions it is. And I'll have that information. I'll probably put it here or somewhere. But basically, the test is just a straight through test. I actually kind of like those tests a little bit better. I tend to do better on those tests. I work quicker through the. Well, I'm making an easy word more difficult. I work quicker through those types of tests. So, 120 minutes. Obviously, you know that Florida has very strict guidelines when you go in to take a test. They are a little bit more strict now due to COVID. You have to wear a mask the whole time. You can't just be up and getting up. I think that's pretty much been the expectation. But they're very particular about making sure that you go straight to your seat, start taking the test. And if you need to get up, you need to kind of motion for the proctors to let them know so you can get up and leave out. But at no time can you remove your mask. Obviously, they still have the same security measures in place where you have to lock up your phone and all of that jazz. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk about those major kind of procedural or structural changes to the test. And there weren't many other than the fact that, you got to keep a mask on and you're not really up and down doing a whole lot of movement during the test. And obviously, just like always, you're in your own cubicle. You kind of got to stay forward. I did hear a couple people cough, and I was like, wait a minute, what's happening? Because you can't cough these days. um, so yeah, I wanted to talk about the test. I realized and I think in retrospect, I realized a little bit more that this test in particular has given people many, many problems, and many people can't pass it. So hopefully, I can shed some insight and give you some tips on ways that you can be successful on the exam. So I already started off with the error. The test is definitely not 120 minutes. When I said that, it didn't sound right. The test is more than 120 minutes. So the test is actually 2 hours and 30 minutes with 120 questions. I want to make sure that I clarify that so you won't go in there telling them people that the lady on the YouTube told you that the test is only 120 minutes. It is definitely 2.5 hours. You have that amount of time, whether you choose to take it or not, and whether it takes you that long, it's definitely going to be up to you. I found myself getting done in don't do what I did, but I found myself getting done in an hour and a half. So I pretty much tried to stick to only a minute per question. So if it's 120 questions, it took me about an hour and a half to finish it, give or take. And so what I did was, my comments are doing a lot right now. What I did was be very strategic, not to overthink what the question was asking. So let me give you a little bit about my background and education. I'm an English major, and so I have a good handle on the English language, right? The test that I'm in, we're talking about is the reading K-12 test. And really, all standardized tests are reading tests. If you really think about it, you really just have to process what's in front of you. Most tests, you don't have to bring any background knowledge, right? That's not true. You have to bring in background knowledge, but you don't have to know a whole lot that you don't already know or that's not already presented on a test, if that makes sense, all right? In some cases, that's not the truth, but for the most part, a lot of our standardized tests are reading tests. That's why we stress reading so much in early literacy and early grades, because if a kid can read, we know that we can put them in front of any type of assessment and they can be somewhat successful, even math to a certain degree. So I do have a background in English. In addition to that, I taught English for about 10 years, okay? I also taught reading during that time. I wasn't certified or endorsed, but during certain times in Florida, you could teach reading without necessarily being endorsed. I think that shifted. I haven't been in the classroom since 2013, so I think some of those rules have shifted and who can teach. Jeez Louise, it's been a minute. Who can teach reading, right? I do know back in the day that you used to be able to become reading endorsed by taking some classes. That could possibly still be the case. And it really just depends on your state. So if you're not sure, you want to make sure that you connect with your district on, what those rules are for being able to teach it and then also being endorsed in it. For me, I find value in having a certification in reading because I also teach reading on a collegiate level. And so I wanted to have that on my certificate just in case, I have some opportunities to expand the campuses in which I already teach. So, what was I talking about? Yeah, just kind of got a little bit off track there a little bit. But the point is that I have a little bit of a good solid background with English language arts and reading. So because of that, I did something I don't suggest that you do. I did not study for this test. Don't do that. And the reason I encourage you not to go into a test unprepared is because you're losing money. One good thing that came out of COVID, not many good things came out of COVID, but one thing that the state of Florida did for their educators is that they waived registration fees and testing fees during the year 2020. So because they waived the fees in 2020, I registered for this reading test in 2020, and then you had up until a certain time this year to take it. And actually, I registered to take it in December, but I pushed it back just for some personal reasons. I pushed it back so that I can take it in February because I felt like I would be more prepared and I would have more time to study. I ain't study, but I do want to tell you and give you some tips on how I passed the test without studying. I really think if you know how to take a test, then you'll do well on this. But don't go in cold. Like if you're not good at just test taking strategies in general and you don't have any type of background in English language or reading, I would not suggest that you follow these guidelines and not be fully prepared. There are preparation courses that you can be a part of. There's free assessments out there. There are assessments that you can pay for. Exam Edge is a really good website. Obviously they're not paying me for this, but they really help prepare me to take the Feely, and I passed the Feely I passed 3 of the subsets of the FELE the first time I took it, and I had to take one part over. I want to say it was organizational something. I might have had to take that one over, or it was one area that I did have to take twice. But Exam Edge really prepared me for that, and it's reasonably priced to get some of the good practice tests. And that's really all I did. I took practice tests. I didn't really do a lot of studying because that's not the best way for me to prepare for a test. But if you are a person that can read information and retain it, that's fine. But I need to practice taking the test so that when I'm taking the test, I'm simulating the same thought processes and things of that nature. So for this particular test, there are 4 different types of questions that you're going to encounter. And I want to talk you through those 4 types of questions and give you some insight into my thought process. Sometimes my thought process doesn't always connect linearly. So just kind of be aware of that. You know how you think, you know how you take tests, you know when you are at your best. So, follow those practices, especially if they haven't failed you. But if you're struggling with the reading K-12 test, you've taken it so many times, you're just exhausted and you're tired of having to take it, then perhaps my perspective can help you out just a little. So the first type of question that you're going to see on the test, and maybe not in this order, but this is one type of question that you're going to see, is a scenario. And so I'm going to read the description here. It's to examine a classroom situation or a student composition, then select the response option that best answers a question, recommends a course of action, or gives the appropriate evaluation or teacher comment. And I want you to not overthink these types of questions. They want you to overthink it so that you can get it wrong. Honestly, that's what I feel like. They're setting you up for failure. But just like in the classroom, if you're a good teacher, if you are worth your paycheck of all the millions that you make, then you know the answers to these questions are anything that is in the best interest of the student, that is not degrading the student, publicly embarrassing them, making them feel bad, isolating them. So if any of the answers involve any of those things, that is not the right answer. Okay, so really, really think logically and practical on this. You don't need a degree to get these types of questions right. You just have to know how to treat children in the moment, particularly as it deals with instruction with reading, right? So don't overthink these types of questions. Really, really think about the most practical answer that is in the best interest of students. You're not embarrassing them. You're not isolating them. You're not putting them in danger. And you're not putting them in a situation where they feel inferior or less than their peers. Here's a sample scenario question. This is straight from the testing organization that is used in the state of Florida. So this is not information that is that only I'm privy to. You have access to this. So here's a sample question. A reading teacher is reviewing a recently published book about a new approach to improving reading comprehension. Okay? Which of the following features should the teacher look for when evaluating the reported success of the approach? All right? So all they're asking you is, what should you look for when you are evaluating if what you're reading has been successful? Don't make it too difficult. All right, here are your options. Whether the author has published other research studies on the same topic, whether the new approach has been successfully adopted for use by other states, whether the results of the research the author conducted on the approach are reliable and valid, or whether the materials used in the approach reflect the diversity of the local student population. What do you think the answer is right off the top of your head? You're probably right. Let's see. All right. So the choices include whether the author has published other research on the same topic. Does that mean that what you are reviewing has shown success? Is there a direct correlation, right? Some best authors have written one text on one topic, and that's all they've needed. So think about, is that a logical response? All right. B, has it been adopted by other states? So for something to be successful, does it have to be adopted by other states? Does that make logical sense? C, whether the results of the research conducted are reliable and valid. Does that make logical sense to show success? Or does the research and the materials reflect diversity of the local student population? Does that make logical sense to show if a recently published book about reading comprehension is successful? Come on, you know the answer to that. You don't need to study for a question like that. As a great educator or as a human being, now I don't want you to feel bad if you get it wrong. So let me lay off of all my euphemisms here. I just think the point that I'm trying to make is that many of these answers are logical if you really just think about what it's asking you. Cut out all the fluff, right? The correct answer is C. We need things that are reliable and valid to show if it's successful or not if it shows diversity. Of course, we would love for it to be. We just know that that's not reality, especially in Florida, right? Just because it hasn't been adopted by other states or that the author hasn't written anything on the same topic doesn't mean that this particular text is not successful in improving reading comprehension. To improve reading comprehension, I need something that is reliable and valid. That's it. The second type of question that's on the test is called text analysis. And I found that these were the easiest questions, even easier than the scenario questions. But I'm going to tell you, the text analysis question says study a text and identify a literary feature such as figure of speech, style, form, or function by choosing the best response option. These are easiest for me because this is a type of these are types of things we teach. Being an English language arts teacher, so I was like, score. Again, I didn't study for this, and I'm just so fortunate that I passed it because this video would have had a different tone if I didn't. But let's read a sample question. So it says, use the following excerpt to answer your question. The high price of oil in the 1970s resulted in a serious problem for many Americans. Long lines to purchase gasoline for cars were unavoidable. People were subjected to higher prices for oil to heat their homes. Oil companies looked to other nations for new oil supplies. They also began drilling for oil on the ocean floor. Which of the following is the excerpt an example of, right? So really, they're just asking you how this text is organized, really. So is it in chronological order, comparison and contrast, main idea, problem and solution? Come on now. Come on now. As an educator, we should know these examples. Chronological means time order. Is it written in time order? The only mention of time in this particular piece is the 1970s, and there's nothing else in the text that tells you in relation to time. So we know that it's not written chronologically. Comparison and contrasting. Are they comparing two different things? No, they're only talking about oil. Main idea and details. Maybe the high price of oil in the 1970s resulted, which is a clue word, in a serious problem for many Americans. These are some of the problems: long lines to purchase gas. People were subjected to higher prices to heat their homes. Oil companies had to look for oil in other places. And then they also began drilling the ocean floor, for oil. So this is definitely problem solution, right? High prices in the 1970s, we had to start looking elsewhere for oil and also started digging the ocean floor. Problem solution. They use the word problem in the passage and problem in the answer. Come on now. So don't overthink these questions. And I think we tend to do that sometimes. So the next type of question on this test is called a direct question, and they make it seem so official, and really it's just choose the best answer for the question. We pay way too much for these tests for them to be so basic. All right, here's the sample question. Read the question and select the best response. Duh. A biography is an example of which of the following? Now, these are kind of simple, and I don't want to minimize that. This test really did make me think, but it didn't make me think as much as I thought it was going to make me think. So, a biography. Bio means life, right? Graphy or graph, the affix, I think. Graph means right? And so biography together means a writing about the life of someone. Auto means self, right? So we know that a biography is me writing about somebody else as opposed to me writing about myself. That's just simple breaking down a word, prefix, suffix, affix, okay? Most English language arts teachers, we think like that. Most people think like that. If you didn't know that, don't feel bad, but really think about before you take the test to consider a brief refresher of prefixes, suffixes, and affixes, because there were quite a few questions where if I had known the meaning of something within the word, I probably would have gotten it right. I did do well on the test, right? But there were some that really did make me think. So although this one was easy, and I don't want to minimize that, that some of them are not so easy, okay? So a biography, here are the answer choices. A realistic fiction, okay? A historical fiction, a narrative nonfiction, or an expository nonfiction. And so for this one, you definitely have to know the difference between fiction and nonfiction. One key, and again, many of you guys know this might be an easy question for some people, but for others it might not be. So I want to make sure that I kind of spend time here and not minimize just because I think it's easy, that it's easy for everybody, right? So you do have to know the difference here between fiction and nonfiction. And one thing that I do with fiction and nonfiction, I just look at the first letter. And so for fiction, I say it's fake, right? For nonfiction, it's not fake. So if that helps you remember, hopefully that'll help you along the way. So I already know that realistic fiction and historical fiction is not going to be right, because a biography is going to always be nonfiction, okay? So now, is a biography a narrative nonfiction, or is it an expository nonfiction, right? Narrative means story. Expository is more like informational text or explanation. And so what do you think it is? Yeah, it's definitely going to be a narrative nonfiction. So when a biography is written, it's the story of somebody's life. A story is also a narrative, okay? The last type of question on this type of test is a sentence completion, and it's just what it says that it is. Select the response option that best completes the sentence. Here's a sample question. Read the question and select the best response. The assessment tools for the purpose of evaluating expertise include, and so the reason that it's sentence completion is because they want you to complete what the assessment tools for the purpose of evaluating expertise is. And so the remainder of that sentence are going to be the answer choices here. Another way to think about this type of question, a lot of times, I don't want to say with absolute certainty that it's always that way, but a lot of times it's going to be like a definition type question, right? That's really all this is. So you really have to know what, I want to say the right thing here. Hold on, let me think about it. Okay, I got it. So what you need to know for this is, what tools do you need to evaluate? What are the best tools to evaluate? Evaluating expertise in particular. So yeah, this one to me, let me read the answer choices, and hopefully if you're still watching a video at this point, it's because you have a test coming up. You maybe are thinking about taking a test. Unfortunately, this is going to be a video just for just like the regular, random person that's just surfing YouTube for something to watch on their way to bed at night. So thank you for still being here. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure that you subscribe. Like this video, share it with an educator friend if you have any that might be taking an assessment or thinking about taking an assessment. You can hit me up in the comments if you have specific questions. If you're in the state of Florida, particularly Duval County, and you're near, if you want to shoot me a message, I'm certainly down to answer any questions about the test, because I saw after I took the test, like, people were just amazed that I didn't study for it. But I did try to give you guys a little bit of background information about why I felt confident going into the test and not studying for it, because I'm really good at taking tests, not necessarily all the content areas. But if you can master taking a test, being practical and logical is literally how I try to live my life in a general sense. So this wasn't that difficult for me. Back to the test. So here are the answer choices. So let me read the question again, just because it's been a minute. The assessment tools for the purpose of evaluating expertise include, so it's not even just evaluating, you're evaluating expertise. So what do you need to evaluate expertise? Do you need a lab notebook, read alouds, and homework assignments? Do you need, that was choice one. Do you need think alouds, concept maps, and observational checklists? All right, you're evaluating expertise. Do you need research papers, formal presentations, and formal debates? All right, or do you need homework assignments, NRTs or norm reference tests, and quizzes? What do y'all think? This one isn't as cut and dry, but my background in reading really helps me with this. And I know that the correct answer is C, research papers, formal presentations, and formal debates. Even if you're not sure, if you're thinking about the word expertise, that's, you're not out here calling everybody an expert. So, what I really like to think about here is, are my answers matching the question in strength and language? And so the word expertise is a big word. Lab notebooks doesn't scream expertise to me. Concept maps doesn't scream expertise, but research papers, right? Formal presentations, formal debates, they scream expertise. Homework assignments, quizzes, those things aren't screaming expertise. So again, I try to think of it as a logical. I didn't necessarily go into this just knowing all of these answers, but I do know how to break down kind of what makes logical sense. So those are the 4 types of questions that you're going to see on the Reading K-12 test. And I do want to go through just a couple more questions, because I realized that those weren't the most tough questions. And I want to talk about some of the questions that I did encounter that I was just absolutely guessing on. But there weren't many of those, and I guess that's why I was successful. I do want to find them and pull them up and really show you guys and talk through my thought process, that maybe it can help now. I know many of you are thinking, V, you hadn't touched on one of the biggest parts of this test, or what most people talk about when they talk about the Reading K-12 test, and that's those theorists. When I tell you God was on my side, because I have not read about these theorists. I hope I'm saying that word right, theorists. In years, I haven't had to. I haven't wanted to. I guessed. I really did guess. I think there were about 3 or 4 questions on the whole 120 questions that were about those guys. And you guys know them. Those are hard names to say. I'm sure they were amazingly smart men, but their names are very difficult. Some of them are women. Well, not many were them are women. Or maybe they were women and the men got credit. But that's a whole other video for a whole different day. Y'all like my hair? I'm all over the place. Study them if you want. I'm never going to tell anybody to not study them. And let me also correct something else I said. I said that the test isn't broken into subsects, and they technically aren't. You get 120 questions all the way through. And maybe the Feely was like this too. My memory is so bad. there are different competencies to the reading K-12 test. I think it's important for you to know what those competencies are. So the theories and theorists fall under knowledge of research and theories of reading processes. I just don't want you to spend too much time there because in my experience, I only had about 3 to 4 questions. I know I didn't have more than 5 questions, and I'm not even exaggerating. So I just feel like if you spend a lot of time there, and for me, I can't bog my head down with that type of information because it's memory based. Like, it's not really practical. Like, I don't go into my classroom my K-12 classroom that I don't even have right now. I'm a post-secondary education teacher. But you're not talking about these theories every day, so it's not like practical for me, and that's the reason why I didn't study because I didn't have time. But that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to bog my mind down with these theorists. Their names are a little bit hard for me. I feel like if I would have started studying those things, it would have gotten me off track for just really staying level and understanding the practicality behind doing well on this test and using my test taking strategies to pass it, as opposed to being bogged down with a whole lot of knowledge that I may or may not even need. That's another problem with studying all the theorists, is because what if they're not even on the test? I've spent all that time wasting my time. So if you know them, great, you'll do well. If you don't know them, like me, it's very possible that you can still pass the test. But you can't not know those and then not also kind of, know a lot of the other things, because then you won't do well. So I don't have the best advice when it comes to that. I just know that it's less than 5 questions for me. If you've taken the test and you've experienced something different where it might have been 10 or 20 questions, please drop that in the comments and share that with people that might be watching this video, because I don't want to mislead anybody, but I also want to just be real and let you know that for me, I was fine. I was fine with not knowing those, but I did want to address it because I do realize that it is a big topic of conversation when it comes to taking a reading K-12 test. Let me tell you something I did not know. Something else I did not know. I did not know these theories: cognitive development, social constructivist, discovery learning, reader response. I did not know those, to be completely transparent with you. But I know how to break down words. I know what words mean. If you know what words mean, I promise you can pass any test. So this question says, a teacher firmly believes that collaboration amongst students is essential for learning. Which of the following theories is closely aligned with this philosophy? Okay. The teacher believes that collaboration, that means working together, is essential for learning. Which theory is closely related? A cognitive development. Cognitive is the way you think, right? The way you process information. It's about the brain and how it works. Social constructivist. Social has to do with, I know what social has to do with, but I want to make sure that I say this in the right way, and related to education. Social, just say together, okay, or with something or someone else. Discovery learning, maybe it has to do with exploration, but that's what I'm going with. And then reader response has to do with the response of the reader. A teacher firmly believes that collaboration amongst students is essential for learning. Which theory is closely aligned with this philosophy? Probably an answer that got something to do with collaboration. Which answer has to do with anything collaborative? Is it cognitive development, social constructivist, discovery learning, or reader response? We can get rid of cognitive development right away and reader response right away. So now we're just trying to figure out the difference between social constructivist and discovery learning. Does discovery learning means discovering with somebody else? Or does social constructivist have something to do with learning with other people? I'm going to go with social constructivist every single time. Let's see if we're right. I'd be doggone if we're not right. We're right. We're right. You're right. You got it. Listen, you can spend time on those theories if you want to. One thing I'm not going to do is waste my time. I try not to. So because I can break down the meaning of words, I did really, really well on this test. And I think you can too. When I started this video, I was like, I'll talk for 10 minutes. I'll be done. If you're still here, you're still here for a reason. Hopefully this helps you. Here's the next question. It says, a teacher collects reading records and rubric scored writing samples over time on select students to document change over time. Which term best describes the teacher's purpose for collecting this type of assessment? Okay, so the teacher is collecting reading records for students over time and rubric score and writing samples over time. Okay, for select students, she's documenting basically how much they improve over time. Okay, the answer choices, and so the question then asks, what term best describes the teacher's purpose? So why is she doing this? Is she doing this to screen them, to diagnose them, to monitor them, or is she doing this to know the outcomes? Think about that. What's the answer? You know this. Think about the way that I told you to think about answering these types of questions. You got this. Trust me. I'm going to give you a second. All right, let's talk about this. Screening. Just think about what is a screening. Don't think about reading. What is a screening? Let's think about, okay, so now I'm drawing a blank. So maybe in a medical field, when you get a screening, what is that? What is a screening? So I'm kind of drawing a blank a little bit, but I think I'm going to try to go with it. And this is really what I was doing on the test. God, I'm so glad that I passed it. So when you screen someone for something, you are assessing whether or not they are qualified or prepared for something else that comes next or that could potentially come next. Okay. Now, this teacher is collecting reading records and rubric scored writing samples over time. Generally, do screenings happen over time? You have to ask yourself that. For the most part, screenings happen like in the beginning. Think about an interview. That's better. Gosh, light bulbs, okay? Think about a screening as an interview, right? Interviews don't typically happen over time for basic jobs, right? And that's the same thing here. That's not a screening. She's doing this over a course of time, all right? Is she trying to diagnose them? She's collecting reading records and reading scored writing samples. I'm going to tell you, diagnosis is another term for things that happen in the beginning. If you're taking a diagnostic test, it's to see where you are so that I'll know how to tailor the instruction for you to be successful along the way. Is this a diagnosis? Nah. Is this monitoring? First of all, you know what? Another light bulb. ING means continuous, right? Screening, diagnosis, monitoring, outcomes. Right away, I'm going to get rid of diagnosis and outcomes because it's not a continual thing like monitoring these students. Monitoring is the answer, by the way. So, if I did a process of elimination right off the bat, and I know that ING means continual, I also teach ESOL to college, not to college students, but for non-native speakers. I teach these types of things all the time. So all of these things help me pass this test. ING means continuous. So this teacher is doing this continuously throughout and over time. I'm going to get rid of diagnosis and outcomes right away. And I know that it's going to be screening or monitoring. Screening happens early. Monitoring happens over time. Monitoring is my answer. I'm going to be real. There are certain types of questions I wasn't sure on. I did think about them and try to figure it out. Maybe I got them right. Maybe I got them wrong. Your test results in the state of Florida doesn't show you an item analysis. You have to pay additional for that. And if I pass the test, I don't care which ones I got wrong, to be completely honest. But it might be helpful, and it might have been helpful for me to get that back so that I can kind of speak to the specific types of questions for you guys. But now we're going to roll with it. Here's one of those questions I had no idea, and I still don't. But let's see if we can talk through it, and let's see if we get it right. And I haven't done the answer yet, so let's see if we got it right. The question says, which of the following is the best way to determine reading instructional groups in a classroom with students who have a wide range of skills and abilities? So I'm trying to figure out reading instructional groups for a wide range of students. So students that are all on different levels. So what do I want to do first, second, and third to determine which groups to put the students in, basically, is what the question is asking me. I don't know. And honestly, I'm trying to think. I was a reading teacher before, so, this might sound ignorant. I just don't remember our grouping techniques back then. This is early 2000s. Obviously, things have changed a little bit since then. I want to say we did put students in reading groups. And right off the top of my head, I feel like I did fit with personality with students and as opposed to skill. That might be ignorant for me to say, but I just can't really remember how we group students. I do know that a lot has changed and a lot has been put into matching students with abilities and things of that nature. So, answer choices: A, administer an IRI. I don't know what I don't know what an IRI. I don't know what an IRI is, but I think it's something reading inventory. Individual reading inventory. Don't get me to. Hey, listen, I don't got all the answers. Phone ringing. I call her back. So administer an IRI. Actually, hold on. I'm back. That was my mama. All right. So administer an IRI, then conduct two miscue analysis. Remember, the question was, which of the following is the best way to determine reading instructional groups? How do you determine which groups to put students in based on a classroom that has a wide range of different levels of students? B is review state reading test scores, then do a reading record. C is review state reading test scores, then administer an IRI. Remember, I don't know what that means. I think it's something reading inventory. And D is administer a reading checklist, then conduct read alouds. I feel like anything that has read alouds in it is not really the best way to determine how to group students. I don't know for sure. So I'm gonna get rid of D right away. For I don't know, when I heard that one out loud, I felt like that was wrong. So let's see. The fact that they chose IRI for two answers, I feel like they want us to choose one of those. To be honest, what I know about standardized tests. So a reading record or a read aloud, I'm going to get rid of both of those. So I'm either going to go with administer an IRI, then conduct two miscue analysis. Miscue analysis are basically when students are reading to you and they have an error as they're reading, and you're marking those errors as they're reading, but it's individual. It's just you and the student. It's not allowed to the class. So, or they want me to choose review state reading test scores, then administer a IRI. So why would I administer a reading inventory after checking the test scores? I feel like the answer is going to be administer the IRI first and then do some type of analysis after that, as opposed to looking at their previous test scores and then doing an IRI. Because a reading inventory is almost like a screening. Remember we talked about screening a few minutes ago? Let's choose A. Hopefully I'm right and not going to be embarrassed on these people YouTube. Let's see. Ooh, I was so wrong. But let me talk to you through how I was almost right, because I should have chosen the other one. Review the test scores and then the IRI. So maybe a IRI is not a screening tool. Oh. Yes, the IRI is a screening tool. Reviewing test scores has nothing to do with any type of assessment in the now. So I can look at where they scored before and then give a screening. Use the information from that screening to group students. Yeah, why would I use a miscue analysis to group students? The answer is C. So I was wrong, but hopefully that thought process can kind of help you if you run across a question like this. I told y'all you know the answers. So I am about to wrap this video up because it's gotten super long. Hopefully it's helpful. If it's been helpful, please click like. Please comment. Tell me more topics maybe that you want me to talk about. If you are an educator, I am an educator and I have a vast resume experience, so I might be able to help somebody. This last question I'm going to talk about did not give me as much trouble as it could have, and I will say I kind of told a little white lie. The only thing that I did do before I took this test is gave myself a refresher of the difference between phonics, phonemics, there's another word, phonics, phonemics. I'm drawing a blank. I'm really drawing a blank. But literally as I'm pulling up to the test site, I had a YouTube video going, and the YouTube video was 7 minutes, and it talked about the difference between phonics, phonemic awareness, and some other term. And I know you educators are probably like, duh, do you know the term? I can't think of the term right now. But that video really did help me out because while there weren't many questions on the test about that, it was important for me to know those things because I saw those words in a lot of different questions. While I didn't necessarily need to know the meaning of the word, to backtrack, I did need to know the meaning of the word, but not necessarily because that was one of the answers, just because it would help me figure out whatever the actual answer was. So the only prep I did was right as I was pulling up to the testing center. I think that's important because, like I said, I saw phonics, phonemic awareness, graph something throughout the entire test. So, maybe 20 something questions might have had one variant or another of that word or a couple of terms like that. So I would encourage you to do some pre-work and if you don't know the meaning of those words and how they might show up on the test, I would encourage you to do a little bit of pre-work when it comes to those particular terms. So the last question says, a teacher uses the following instructional procedures. One is teach students to recognize orally the individual sounds and words, and teach students to blend the sounds and words. So what is the focus of this instruction? So you have to know what these words mean to understand how to answer this question. The answer choices are an initial consonant plus phonogram, phonemic awareness, single letter phonics method, or analytical phonic method. Okay, right off the bat, we know that it's not going to be single letter phonics method, because it says teach the students to blend the sounds and words. And we also know that it's not going to be analytical phonic method because I don't even know what that is, and there's nothing that I know about this whole content that really makes sense in this particular question. All right, so hopefully I'm making sense on this one. The reason I know that this is phonemic awareness is because of that 7-minute video. And if I remember, I'll try to put it down in the description so that you guys can watch it because it helped me out. And I literally watched it right before I got to the testing center. And it helped me with quite a few of the answers because I was ready to see the words, right? And then I was also kind of aware of what they meant in different contexts because I had heard that video minutes before going in. So I try not to bog my mind down with information. I am a crammer when it comes to standardized tests. It helps me get the information and get it right back out as opposed to studying all of this information over time and thinking that I'm going to remember it, when it's time for me to take the test. It's just way too much information for me. Now, you know what type of test taker you are, so please don't let me discourage you from doing what's been working for you. But if you've been struggling with this test and you know that you need something new, a different approach to it, I would really encourage you to do some test taking strategies and learning how to break down words and really looking at questions and looking at being very practical in your responses as opposed to anything that's way too deep, because I think we've been overthinking this along the way. And so the answer to this last question that I just mentioned is phonemic awareness. I think that's pretty much all of the points that I wanted to make about this test. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It turned out being way longer than I anticipated. I'm sorry. But if you're still here, you're still watching, then it means that you needed the content. So I appreciate you being here. Please subscribe. I will do more videos like this. I can do videos on anything. If you have a topic, just drop it in the comments and I'll be sure, to follow up with you. And again, thank you for watching. And yo, as always, y'all, it's a vibe.
Go get 'em, go, go get 'em, go, go get 'em, go, go get 'em.
This is a remix, so throw your hands in the air, wave them all around like you just don't care. This is a remix, so throw your hands in the air, wave them all around like you just don't care.